What's up, you guys? Mo Awesome from Awesome MTB, and welcome to the Awesome MTB Ultimate XC Bike Shootout. Oh my God. Hopefully you guys enjoyed some of that riding footage. We have finally made it to the conclusion video where we're going to be talking about what was our favorite bikes from the shootout, as well as who we think each of these bikes is for and where we think each bike is lacking, and also where we think each bike is excelling at. Now you guys are probably wondering, why is there an RE signal peak behind me? It's because we're actually on the road right now. We're in Salt Lake City, Utah, and there is a heat wave. We've been doing all of these videos fully remote. We actually did that whole series fully remotely. They said, what do you guys do, and use our office. I also want to say, I saw some of your guys' comments about the price points of all of the bikes in this buyer's guide. Now, this wasn't supposed to be a budget buyer's guide. We were trying to really see what was the best XC bike out there. However, there are a ton of budget-friendly options that are still high-performing cross-country race bikes, like the Signal Peak, which is actually on sale right now for $35.99. Once again, you guys, there's never been a better time to be a mountain biker, and there really is a bike for every person's budget, as well as personal riding needs. Also, before we pick a favorite bike, I do want to give a huge kudos to Pro Bike Supply for partnering up with us on this buyer's guide. Once again, you guys, I can't recommend Pro Bike Supply enough. If you're ever in the market for your next bike, they are one of the most awesome bike shops out there. They have a really big online website, but most importantly, they specialize in custom builds, so they help make your dream bike a reality. They also have professional mechanics, so you can rest assured knowing that your next bike is going to be completely ready to hit the trails as soon as it arrives to you. And once again, you guys, they have so many awesome brands to choose from. If you ever are in the market for your next bike, we'll put all of their information in the description of this video. They take care of friends of the channel, so be sure to let them know that we sent you, and they will take care of you. Now, before we get into the actual awards, I want to talk about some things that I learned from this buyer's guide. Throughout this entire test, there was so many different factors and variables. There was a slight weight difference because, once again, you guys, even though each one of these bikes was in between 24 to 26 pounds, they each did so differently. Some did it via the frame, some did it via the components, some did it via a very lightweight build, and seeing how each of these bikes performed on the trails gave me a better understanding of what I was looking for. Number one, lockouts matter. I really am a big advocate now now for lockouts on cross-country bikes. I just feel like it gives this category of travel so much more capabilities out on the trails, because for the single pivot flex stay option bikes, you can have that initial stroke be a little bit softer. You can get away with that lightweight single pivot nature, but having that lockout allows you to lock it out and have a very stiff initial stroke when you're out of the saddle. And also there's just something to getting up out of the saddle, putting that power down and having the bike locked out. It was unfortunate there wasn't a lockout that I was 100% sold on. I did really like flight attendants. However, I can see it needing a little bit more time in development to really cater to a wider variety of riders out there. I feel like right now it's still a little bit more race focused, but I did really like that system, and I have a full review coming out on flight attendants soon. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, I think more bikes need lockouts. The other thing that I realized is 120 millimeters of travel and 66.5-degree head angles, I feel like is the sweet spot right now for bikes. I feel like that head angle is not too steep, not too slack, and same thing with that travel. I feel like having 120 millimeters of travel gives you a very efficient pedaling platform, but at the same time, it's a very capable descending chassis as well. Component-wise, I also learned a lot about what I favor there. I definitely think that RockShox is leading the charge in terms of cross-country suspension. I prefer the RockShox suspension over Fox on cross-country bikes. I just felt like the RockShox suspension had a little bit more of a muted feeling out on the trail, and it made the ride on these shorter travel cross-country bikes a little less harsh, where it felt like the Fox had a much more stiffer profile. Now, the Fox did feel a little bit racier, so I could see if times are the only thing that you're thinking about, maybe the Fox could be a little bit faster at the end of the day, but I just like the comfort feeling from the RockShox suspension. I also think that more cross-country bikes need 4-piston brakes. I really did like the Level Ultimate brakes. Those are probably some of my favorite brakes of the test. And on top of that, my favorite tire was probably the Recon. The Recon Race, even though it's faster rolling, I just feel like it's just not enough tire. I feel like that Recon, especially for these bikes and how capable they are in terms of descending, had a really good rolling resistance, but at the same time, just enough traction to where you didn't feel too sketched out on looser sections. In terms of drivetrain, I'm still not a fan of transmission. I tried transmission on a few of these bikes. I think I prefer the XTR or the mechanical X01. All right, now let's talk about what I think was the best bike of this buyer's guide. And to do so, I feel like I need to touch on each one of these bikes a little bit. So first up, we have the Transition Spur. The reason I'm bringing this one up right away is because I kind of want to get this out of the test, because I feel like this bike never really wanted to be in the test. Not that it's a bad pedaler. Actually, I was very impressed by how well this bike performed for how capable it was on the downhills. This bike on the downhills definitely had a very enduro style feel to it. Even the way you rode it, you kind of sat a little bit more off the back, and it actually felt like a very smooth transition from my enduro bike to the Transition Spur, even though it only had 120 millimeters of travel. So while yes, I do think this is a very efficient platform, I would say that this bike really did not want to wear the title of XC. And for the Transition Spur, we are going to have to give that bike the award for bike that most likely just wants nothing to do with this video series and just wants to go ride very technical trails in a short travel manner. All right, the next bike I want to talk about is that Evil Following. Now, some people would have said I would have dismissed this bike if they didn't see the flight attendant in the actual build, if I just told them I was getting an Evil Following. Evil definitely isn't synonymous with cross-country racing. However, as you guys could tell, the flight attendant matched with the SRAM XX SL build brought this bike into that 26-pound weight range. And honestly, you guys, this thing blew me away by how efficient it pedaled and also how progressive it was for its time. I mean, this bike came out years ago, and for being a 120 millimeter travel bike with almost the same geo as the current Specialized Epic, you could really tell that they were at the forefront of making 120 millimeter travel bikes pedal efficiently, but also fun on the downhills. That bike, honestly, you guys, put a smile on my face every single time I took it out. The Delta system is insane. If you ever get a chance to try out an Evil, they are one of the best cornering bikes. The way they corner feels very unnatural because you come into it with a certain amount of speed, and as soon as you pump out, you are flying out of that corner. I absolutely loved how the Evil Following cornered, and honestly, you guys, that bike in the X-Low setting was probably one of the funnest bikes I've ridden in my entire life. We are gonna have to give the Evil Following the award for most fun 120 millimeter bike. I still feel bad putting the word XC there because I feel like at its heart, that bike just wants to be let loose in and out of corners, and it wants that huge smile to be put on your face. All right, now talking about the Pivot Mach 4 SL. You guys know me, I am a little bit biased because I love DW-ing suspension bikes, and the Pivot Mach 4 SL definitely stood up to the Pivot name. It is such a capable technical descender, but at the same time, it comes in such a lightweight package. I was constantly blown away by how nimble that bike was, how much confidence it gave me, especially when the trail got techie and steep. Cornering on that bike is also very fun with that short rear end, and it really did give me a different perspective in terms of cross-country race bikes, because I could tell that that bike definitely caters to a little bit more of a technical cross-country racetrack. And yeah, that's gonna be an interesting thing, is if you are a rider that's going all around the world racing your bike, how do you pick the right bike for you? Now, while I did think that the bike did amazing over technical descents, I could tell that on some tracks that maybe you would want a little bit more high-speed stability, maybe you'd be better off with a little bit of a longer wheelbase. However, with that being said, I definitely think in terms of nimbleness as well as technical capabilities of a cross-country race bike, that was one of the most capable technical descending cross-country race bikes on the market. It's light, it gives you confidence, and I can't recommend that enough, especially if you're a rider out there that maybe finds yourself on more technical terrain. And so we are gonna have to give the Pivot Mach 4 SL the award for most technical capable XC race bike. That bike truly does inspire a ton of confidence on the downhill, but it does so in such a lightweight XC race package. All right, now for the Mondraker F Podium. Now this bike was so interesting because basically as soon as I got it out of the box, I had the most confidence I've ever had out of the entire test, to the point where one of my buddies had to say, dude, maybe you should chill out a little bit, because I was definitely pinning it. I just had so much confidence in that bike. I'm a firm believer in their forward geometry approach. Mondraker clearly knows what they're doing when it comes to geo as well as suspension. I really did like that zero, and that's funny because I'm not necessarily a VPP person, although that changed recently with a high tower demo, but we'll talk about that in the future. Now, I will say the frame itself definitely had the stiffest feel out of the test, and I definitely could tell that, man, if I went on a longer epic, maybe I would have a little bit more rider fatigue on that bike. Obviously, I could probably tune this better, going with a different wheel set maybe in the future, or maybe going a little bit of a larger tire profile. So we are gonna have to give the Mondraker the award for most confident descender out of this test. And the award for most expensive bike of this test definitely goes to the S-Works Epic at $14,500. I'm joking, we're not gonna give that award out, although it is true. At $14,500, the S-Works Epic really did make me realize, man, they are all about racing with that bike. That bike felt like it had just the right amount of everything. Chainstay length, travel, head angle. Everything is so precise on that bike, and they've kept that rear end nice and tucked, and they've also kept the bike nice and low. I really do think that every second that you could save has been thought of by Specialized. I was very impressed by the race nature of this bike, and the results speak for themselves because this was actually the fastest bike in the test. I had a bunch of timed loops on there. Weight is awesome, the pedaling position is awesome, the carbon frame and the layup is really rad as well. A couple of other things to note here that I was really impressed by Specialized. I mean, they really did think of everything. You have two geo positions, so you could really dial the bike in based off of where you're riding. You have internal frame SWAT storage. You have the most progressive geometry. I mean, the head angle in the low position, they're already breaking into the 65-degree range. And yeah, everything about this bike screams to me, we want to be the fastest XC race bike. And like I said, the results speak for themselves. Was it my favorite bike of the test? It wasn't. I definitely think that the S-Works Epic isn't for me. I'm not the rider that likes everything low, especially the front end. And on top of that, I really am a fan of size proportional chainstays. I do think that size proportional chainstays might not be the fastest at the end of the day, but I do like my high speed stability, and being 6'2" with a really high saddle height, the saddle height to bar drop ratio, I just feel like was a little bit off with the stock S-Works Epic. And like I said, even though it's the fastest bike, it's not the bike that I would first reach for if I was going for a fun ride. So for the Specialized S-Works Epic, we're gonna have to give that bike the award for fastest bike out of this test. All right, and we're down to two bikes right now. We have the Yeti ASR and the Cannondale Scalpel. And you guys are probably wondering, what was the best bike in this buyer's guide and what was our personal favorites? I really did have a blast on both of these bikes, and if I was to build up a personal bike, it would be a very tough decision between both of these. I feel like the Yeti ASR really does capture what XC is all about. They went for the lightest platform out there. I feel like they got very close to it. It just inspires you to get on it and just go for long marathon days. The front end is a little bit higher stack height wise, so you have a little bit more control of the front end, and on top of that, size proportional chainstays gives you that high speed stability, especially in the XL that I was testing. Once again, you guys, every time I got on the Yeti ASR, I could just tell I wanted to ride my bike all day. It was very comfortable, and the frame itself had a very comfortable carbon layup. I felt like the vibration dampening was there. It wasn't the stiffest bike of the test, but at the same time too, that bike was so efficient that I don't think it necessarily needed to be, and I definitely felt very comfortable as well as less fatigue on the ASR. I feel like the Cannondale Scalpel was actually the most comfortable XC bike out of this entire test. For the Yeti ASR, yes, it had a very comfortable carbon construction. I felt like the Cannondale Scalpel had a similar carbon approach, but at the same time too, geo-wise, going a little bit longer in the front reach and having that size proportional chainstay gave it a very planted, centered bike when you were pedaling. I feel like as soon as you hop on the Candle Scalpel, you kind of think to yourself, what is going on here? Why do I feel so good on this bike right away? The Yeti ASR took a little bit more adjusting, and I definitely think for some riders out there that may be preferring a little bit more high-speed stability, like that's going to come from that Candle Scalpel and that longer reach. However, with that being said, I could definitely see in a race environment the Yeti ASR may be edging out the Candle Scalpel just because the wheelbase is a little bit more manageable on the ASR, and that's why I feel like these things are tying, because I feel like both bikes kind of have similar approaches to single pivot. Even though the flex stay is in different places, I do think that the ASR relies on a lockout a little bit more so than the Scalpel, and that's why I have to give the Scalpel some points there, because I felt like the anti-squat was better on the Scalpel and out of the saddle sprints felt a little bit more efficient and less reliant on a lockout. And once again, you guys, it's such a tough pick because I feel like both these bikes inspire you to put long days in the saddle. Both of them are very fast. Both of them are very capable descenders. One other thing to note here is my wife, Hannah, has been on a ton of bikes over the years. And as soon as she sat on the Candle Scalpel, she said that was one of the best XC bikes she's ever ridden. And she has an XC racing background. Yeah, I really did love both of these bikes. I feel like I could build up either one of these bikes and have a blast. And we are going to have to give the award for best bike out of this test to, it's a tie, the Candle Scalpel and the Yeti ASR. Now I am going to give another award to the Yeti ASR for being the most Type 2 fun bike out of the test. I feel like that bike really makes you want to suffer. It's just so light, it inspires you to ride for hours on end, and it's still such a capable descender. And I'm going to give an award to the Candle Scalpel for being the most comfortable XC bike of this test. So with that being said, that is the conclusion of the awesome MTB XC buyer's guide. Now we have seen your guys' comments. There's a lot of brands out there that didn't make it into the buyer's guide. It was logistically so hard to even just have 7 bikes. We do want to do more of these in the future. So yeah, let us know in the comment section if there's an XC bike that we missed in this test, and we'll try to put it in the next test. Thank you guys so much for all of the encouragement from this series. And with that being said, until next time, you guys, ride awesome.